Listen up, because what I'm about to tell you might just change everything you thought you knew about Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. She just dropped a bombshell that has the entire WNBA world shaking, and nobody's talking about the real implications here. Clark basically just admitted she misses her old coach, Lisa Bluder, and threw some serious shade at the Fever's offensive system. But here's the kicker: while she's been sitting on the bench injured, Sophie Cunningham has been absolutely lighting it up, dropping 17 points and drilling 4 threes against Seattle. Is there a power struggle brewing in Indianapolis? Stick around, because this story gets wild. You want to know what's really going down in Indianapolis right now? Caitlin Clark just went on Sue Bird's podcast and basically said she's frustrated with her WNBA teammates. Not directly, but when you read between the lines, it's crystal clear. She talked about how Lisa Bluder, her college coach at Iowa, basically brainwashed players into knowing exactly where to be on every single play. Then she dropped this absolute bomb, and I'm paraphrasing here. How do people at the professional level not know where to move? It blows my mind still. That's not just a casual observation, folks. That's a direct shot at either her teammates, her coaches, or both. And before you say I'm reaching, let me break down exactly why this matters so much. At Iowa, Lisa Bluder ran what's called a read and react system, designed specifically to maximize Caitlin Clark's generational talent. 5 shooters on the floor at all times. Perfect spacing. Everyone knew their role down to the inch. Bluder was so meticulous that she literally had Clark read parts of Phil Jackson's book Sacred Hoops. You know, the one about coaching Michael Jordan and getting him to buy into a team system while still being the superstar. That's the level of detail we're talking about here. Bluder understood that when you have a once-in-a-generation talent, you build the entire system around them. You don't try to fit them into your predetermined box. But here's where things get spicy. Stephanie White, the new Fever coach, has a completely different philosophy. She's been pushing a motion offense that emphasizes ball movement over individual brilliance. She literally said, and this is a direct quote from her press conference, that great teams are going to take that strength away if the Fever rely too heavily on Clark's generational talent. She compared it to how the Pacers use Tyrese Halliburton, talking about buying into the we over the me. Now, that sounds nice in theory, but there's just one problem. Caitlin Clark ain't Tyrese Halliburton. She's more like Steph Curry or Luka Doncic. You don't minimize their touches, you maximize them. The tension has been building all season long. Back in May, Clark publicly stated that the Fever needed to do a better job getting her the ball in transition. She said there's a fine balance between playing her off the ball and getting the ball in her hands, and that she's at her best in transition. Everyone knows that, she said. But what has Stephanie White done? She's inserted another point guard, Ari McDonald, into the starting lineup alongside Clark. She said she likes having 2 primary ball handlers on the floor. Translation: she doesn't trust Clark to run the offense by herself. And get this, White's biggest concern about reintegrating Clark after her injury wasn't about her health or conditioning. It was about, and I quote, "How do we continue to keep our ball movement?" Ball movement. Your superstar is coming back from injury, and you're worried about ball movement. That's like worrying about your car's paint job when the engine's on fire. It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes championship teams tick. You don't win titles by having equal opportunity offense. You win by letting your best players be great. Meanwhile, look at what's been happening while Clark's been injured. Sophie Cunningham, the player the Fever traded for specifically to complement Clark's game, has been absolutely balling out. 17 points against Seattle, shooting over 60% from 3 over her last few games. Lexi Hull's been drilling threes. Chloe Bibby came in on a hardship contract and is shooting 55% from deep. The Fever are on a 5-game winning streak without their superstar. And you know what Becky Hammon said about the Fever without Clark? She said the ball movement and aggression by other players is substantially more. They play like a more traditional team. Is that really what you want, traditional, when you have the most non-traditional talent in the league? Here's what nobody's saying out loud, but everyone's thinking. There might be a legitimate rift developing between Clark and the coaching staff. Think about it. Clark spent 4 years at Iowa where every single player knew exactly where to be, when to cut, where to set screens. Lisa Bluder was so detailed that Clark joked she brainwashed players. Not literally, but like, if you drive here, you're going here, and you're going here. Everything was choreographed to perfection. Now she's in a system where she's openly wondering how professional players don't know where to move. That's not just frustration, that's borderline disrespect. And honestly, she might have a point. The numbers tell an interesting story too. When Clark's been healthy this season, she's averaged 14 points and 13 assists in games where she's played over 30 minutes, but her shooting percentages have been down, especially from 3. Why? Because she's not getting the same quality of looks she got at Iowa. At Iowa, she had the green light to pull from the logo. She had plays designed specifically to get her open in transition. She had teammates who knew exactly where to be when she drove, creating optimal passing angles. Now she's trying to fit into a motion offense that treats her like just another cog in the machine. Let me tell you something else that's been bothering me. Stephanie White keeps talking about how the Fever need to stack wins and build consistency. But how can you build consistency when your offensive philosophy changes depending on who's available? When Clark plays, they want her to be a more traditional point guard, setting up others first. When she's out, suddenly Sophie Cunningham and Kelsey Mitchell have the green light to jack up shots. That's not a system, that's chaos. And it's exactly the opposite of what Lisa Bluder did at Iowa, where the system was the system regardless of who was on the floor. The irony here is thick enough to cut with a knife. The Fever made all these offseason moves, re-signed Kelsey Mitchell, brought in Natasha Howard and Damiris Dantas, traded for Sophie Cunningham, supposedly to build around Clark. But instead of maximizing her strengths, they're asking her to change her game to fit their vision. It's like buying a Ferrari and then only driving it in second gear because you're worried about gas mileage. You don't make Caitlin Clark adapt to your system, you adapt your system to Caitlin Clark. And here's the real kicker that should have every Fever fan worried. Lisa Bluder retired right after Clark left Iowa. She could have easily taken a year off and then jumped to the WNBA. There were rumors, whispers, that she might follow Clark to Indianapolis eventually. But with the way things are going, why would she? She's watching her former star player struggle in a system that doesn't maximize her talents. She's seeing Clark publicly express frustration about teammates not knowing where to be. She's probably sitting at home thinking, I spent 4 years perfecting an offense for this kid, and now they're trying to turn her into something she's not. The situation gets even more interesting when you look at what other coaches around the league are saying. Becky Hammon noted that Clark demands a different kind of attention, she changes how defenses have to play. But instead of leaning into that, the Fever seem to be trying to use it as a decoy. They want teams to focus on Clark so other players can get open shots. That's backwards thinking. You want teams to help off other players so Clark can destroy them. That's how the Warriors use Steph Curry. That's how the Mavericks use Luka. You don't minimize your superstar's impact, you maximize it. Here's something else to consider. Clark mentioned that she's been signing autographs for way longer when she's injured than when she's active. She talked about feeling a responsibility to the fans who come to see her play. You know what that tells me? She gets it. She understands she's not just another player. She's the draw. She's the reason attendance is up, TV ratings are through the roof, and merchandise is flying off the shelves. But does her coaching staff understand that? Based on their offensive philosophy, I'm not so sure. The timing of Clark's comments is particularly interesting. She drops this bomb about missing Bluder's system right when the Fever are on a winning streak without her. Coincidence? I don't think so. She's watching her team succeed with a more free-flowing offense while she's been asked to be more structured when she plays. She's seeing Sophie Cunningham and others thrive in the exact kind of system she excelled in at Iowa, lots of shooting, lots of space, lots of freedom, and she's probably wondering why she can't get that same freedom. Now, let me be clear about something. Stephanie White is a good coach. She's won at every level. She knows basketball. But knowing basketball and knowing how to coach a generational talent are two different things. Phil Jackson was a good coach before Michael Jordan, but he became a great coach when he figured out how to let Jordan be Jordan while still running a team concept. Steve Kerr was a solid coach, but he became elite when he unleashed Steph Curry and built the entire Warriors system around his unique skills. That's what Lisa Bluder did at Iowa, and that's what the Fever need to figure out fast. Because here's the truth nobody wants to admit, if the Fever don't figure this out, they're wasting Clark's prime years. She's 23 years old, she should be dominating the league right now, not trying to figure out where her teammates are supposed to be on basic plays. She should be pushing the pace, pulling from 30 feet, and making passes that end up on highlight reels. Instead, she's running motion offense and trying to be a traditional point guard. It's like asking Michelangelo to paint by numbers. The solution seems obvious. Bring in an offensive coordinator who understands Clark's game. Maybe even convince Lisa Bluder to come out of retirement as a consultant. Run the same concepts that worked at Iowa, 5-out spacing, emphasis on transition, read and react principles. Let Clark cook when she has advantages instead of always looking to make the extra pass. Stop treating her like she needs to be reined in and start treating her like the franchise player she is. But will that happen? I have my doubts. There's ego involved here. Stephanie White has her system, her philosophy, her way of doing things. Admitting it might not be the best fit for Clark would mean admitting she was wrong, and coaches, especially new ones trying to establish authority, don't like admitting they're wrong. So we might be stuck watching this square peg, round hole situation play out all season. Here's my prediction, and mark this down, if things don't change, we're going to see more comments like this from Clark. More subtle jabs, more frustration leaking out in interviews. She's too smart and too media savvy to blow everything up publicly, but she's going to make her feelings known. And eventually, either the system changes to fit her, or we might see something nobody wants to think about. Clark looking for a new situation where her talents are properly utilized. The real tragedy here is that this should be the beginning of something special in Indianapolis. They have the pieces, they have the talent, they have the best young player in the league. But instead of everything clicking, there's tension, frustration, and a fundamental disconnect between what the star player needs and what the coaching staff wants. That's a recipe for disappointment, not championships. Listen, I know some of you think I'm overreacting, that I'm reading too much into Clark's comments. But when a player starts publicly talking about how much better things were with their old coach, when they're questioning why professional teammates don't know where to be, when they're frustrated about not getting the ball in situations where they excel, that's not nothing. That's a cry for help. That's a player saying, hey, something's not right here, without actually saying it directly. The ball is in the Fever's court now. They can either adapt their system to maximize their generational talent, or stick to their guns and hope Clark figures out how to thrive in a system that doesn't suit her. But if I'm a Fever fan, I know which option I'm hoping for, because Caitlin Clark playing at less than her full potential is good. But Caitlin Clark unleashed, in a system designed for her strengths? That's championship caliber. That's must-see TV. That's the difference between being a good team and a great one. So, what do you think? Is Caitlin Clark right to be frustrated? Should the Fever change their system to maximize her talents, or should she adapt to what Stephanie White wants to run? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive into what's really happening in Indianapolis, hit that like button and subscribe for more real talk about the WNBA. Because trust me, this story is far from over.